Okay, let's unpack this. In our, well, increasingly connected world, every click, every single purchase leaves some kind of digital trail.
Yeah, it really does.
But what exactly is that trail? And maybe more importantly, who's actually following it?
Uh-huh.
Today, we're taking a deep dive into open source intelligence OSINT, how it uses your digital footprint, and crucially, how you can protect your privacy in an age where hiding just seems, well, harder and harder.
And what's truly revealing here, I think, is how even the most, seemingly harmless online actions contribute to this surprisingly comprehensive portrait of you.
Right.
So our mission in this deep dive is really to illuminate these connections, explore the surprising depth of publicly available information, and maybe most importantly, equip you with some practical strategies to safeguard your digital self.
So we'll cover the digital footprint, the fingerprint.
Exactly. What they are, who uses this information, the unexpected and, frankly, often alarming ways it can be gathered and misused, and then, of course, what you can actually do to minimize your online exposure.
Okay, so let's start with that footprint. Think of it like walking on a fresh blanket of snow, right? Every step leaves a mark.
Good analogy.
Your digital footprint is basically that accumulation of all your activities online. Your browsing, social media posts, purchases, signing up for newsletters, even just checking the weather.
Mm-hmm.
It includes things like your IP address, personal details, and together it paints this incredibly accurate portrait of you. And, unlike snow, these digital footprints can be permanent.
And this brings up a really important point. Is having a digital footprint inherently a bad thing?
Yeah, is it always bad?
Not always, no. It can actually provide personalized online experiences, which can make things easier for you. It can even help shape a positive online image for, say, job applications or maybe college admissions.
Okay.
However, and this is the big caveat, it can certainly lead to unwanted solicitations, a pretty significant decrease in your privacy, and definitely a heightened risk of identity theft or targeted cyber attacks, like phishing.
But it goes even deeper than just what you maybe intentionally share online, right?
Absolutely.
Your systems, your devices, they also subtly emit what are called digital fingerprints. These are unique identifiers used for tracking.
Like your browser settings.
Exactly. They're formed from characteristics like your browser version, your operating system, screen resolution, installed plugins, even your time zone. And this includes something called OS fingerprinting, too.
Right, which is basically identifying the specific operating system your device runs, kind of like spotting a unique accent in its digital voice, you could say.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
Yeah.
Based on subtle characteristics of how it communicates over the network.
So when you bring this all together, OSINT, open source intelligence, it directly uses both your digital footprint, the stuff you do, and those more subtle digital fingerprints to gather information.
Which connects back to what the sources say.
Precisely. This inherent link means that, as the sources clearly state, it's becoming harder and harder to have any kind of privacy.
That's a pretty powerful statement. So if privacy is that challenging to maintain, who exactly is using this OSINT stuff? And, for what purposes? It's not just governments doing national security or criminal investigations, is it?
Oh, absolutely not. It extends far, far beyond that. Commercial organizations use it extensively. Think market research, due diligence, even vetting potential business partners.
Okay.
And then you have individuals, private investigators use it heavily, journalists rely on it, even just, curious citizens sometimes.
The idea that all this seemingly public information can be so easily gathered together, it's quite striking.
It really is, and there's a paradox here. The very advantages of OSINT, its access to this huge range of readily available sources, its timeliness, cost-effectiveness, its general transparency, these same things underscore just how easily personal data can be aggregated.
So its strengths are also its dangers, in a way.
Exactly. It makes OSINT an incredibly powerful tool, but undeniably also a significant threat to personal privacy.
That makes a lot of sense. I'm actually a bit curious now. How do they go beyond just basic searches? Is it really that much more sophisticated than just, like, typing something into Google?
Oh, it is, dramatically so. Beyond basic search engines, OSINT analysts use advanced search queries, often called Google dorking.
Right? I've heard of that.
Yeah, which leverage specific commands to find hidden or less obvious information on websites that regular searches might just completely miss. And they also diversify their searches significantly. A search on, say, Yandex might turn up vastly different results than Google for the exact same query.
Interesting.
Then you get into the realm of people search websites. Sites like fastpeoplesearch.com, True People Search, Redaris. These can provide current and past home addresses, ages, phone numbers, even relatives.
Wow.
It's basically a goldmine for anyone trying to build a profile on someone. Offers crucial starting points, or pivot points as they call them, for much deeper investigation.
That's incredibly detailed and potentially alarming. What are the real-world consequences of this kind of information being so readily available?
Well, the sources highlight some really serious dangers. Knowing someone's home address can lead to things like swatting.
Which is calling the SWAT team on them, right?
Exactly, calling SWAT teams to a person's house under totally false pretenses. Or ordering harmful deliveries anonymously. The sources mention things like cow or horse poop, believe it or not.
Oh my gosh.
And there's even talk of crime as a service, where physical damage can be orchestrated and paid for in cryptocurrency. It makes it disturbingly easy to cause significant distress, even harm, if you have someone's home address.
That's genuinely scary.
It is. And it's not just direct searches either. Think about crowdsourced information apps like Sync.me or Truecaller.
Caller ID apps.
Yeah. They collect entire contact lists shared by users, often without people fully realizing it. And this seemingly benign act often leads to remarkably accurate results about who knows whom, relationships, networks.
So people upload their whole contact list.
Pretty much. And analysts can even use advanced techniques like virtual phone environments or Android emulators to access these apps without linking to their own devices, scraping that data.
Wow. Okay, so with so much information potentially floating around from all these different places, how do analysts even keep it all straight? It sounds like it could be just total information overload.
Oh, it absolutely can be overwhelming. That's a real challenge. The sources highlight that experts often use mind maps, visual tools like those you can make in Obsidian or similar software.
To connect the dots.
Exactly. To manage all this data, visually see the connections, and crucially, avoid getting lost down those infamous rabbit holes, which is easy to do when you're jumping between so many different sources and finding so much info.
Makes sense.
And speaking of sources, the real takeaway here, the core principle, is that OSINT isn't about finding one magic tool. It's about relentlessly cross-referencing information from multiple public sources, even really obscure ones for redundancy and due diligence.
Right.
So you check one source against another and another, precisely. And interestingly, they often prefer free tools, too.
Why is that?
Well, partly because it allows them, or potentially a law enforcement leader, to recreate their searches without hitting paywalls, for verification purposes.
Ah, okay. So we've talked about the digital trail, the online stuff. But what about physical movements? Even your real-world location can be surprisingly exposed, can't it?
It certainly can. It's not just online. For instance, tools like wigle.net, WIGLE, can map Wi-Fi network IDs, the SSIDs, directly to physical locations.
For people mapping Wi-Fi networks as they drive around.
Exactly, from war driving data. And even simpler things like just exploring Google Maps Street View can reveal telling details like vehicles in a driveway or signs in a yard.
Right.
And what's really surprising is that sometimes you can find unredacted images or details. Maybe a blurred license plate becomes clear by just virtually moving a little bit down the street or viewing from a back street perspective.
Or checking other map services.
Exactly. Or checking other map services like Bing Maps or Apple Maps. Sometimes they have different images, different angles, different levels of blurring. It's all about finding those different vantage points.
And what about official records?
Then there are government records. In the U.S., for example, voter registries are often public record. And if you know someone's first name, last name, and date of birth, you can frequently find their home address.
Just like that.
Sometimes, yeah. And it's not just manual detective work anymore. Sophisticated automation, using tools like KO or Burp Suite, allows analysts to rapidly test millions, or at least thousands, of data points to fill in missing information.
Like trying every possible birth year.
Precisely. The example given was finding Dwayne Johnson's birth year by brute forcing possibilities against public records, or even identifying specific hotel room numbers if they know a guest's surname by rapidly querying a reservation system. It's about combining these small clues with immense digital speed and automation.
That's incredible. So this isn't just about finding publicly available profiles online. It's about piecing together these disparate bits of public data from all over.
Exactly. It's mosaic building.
Yeah.
Take website exploitation, for instance. One really striking example involves using publicly accessible auto parts sites like O'ReillyAuto.com or car sales platforms like Carvana.com.
How does that work?
You can sometimes use just a license plate number entered into their system, maybe pretending to order a part, or get a quote to pull up the vehicle identification number, the VIN.
Wow.
And once you have that VIN, you can then query government DMV sites or related public record portals to find things like title information, lien holders, registration dates.
Just from a license plate seen on the street.
Potentially, yeah. It's truly wild how much information you can sometimes extract from what seems like an innocent car part search or a vehicle lookup. And similar APIs exist for UK vehicle searches as well. It's not just a US thing.
It's just crazy that you can get that information.
It is, and it goes even deeper with something called API scraping. A fascinating aspect is how much data is available through application programming interfaces APIs, even when it's not actually visible on the website interface you see.
So data hidden behind the scenes?
Kind of. Tools exist that can, for example, scrape Google Sheets APIs to find out who created certain public documents. Or tools like OSI, which try to link every online account back to a specific email address.
Like finding out all the accounts linked to Bob123.
Exactly. Bob123 has an Adobe account and a bodybuilding.com account, that sort of thing. There are even tools like Magritte that specialize in username enumeration across hundreds of websites, so you could find where a specific username, say David Bumble, is used maybe on Twitch, Patreon, Udemy, building that profile.
It's quite a revelation about how much hidden or at least not obvious data is potentially accessible.
It truly is. And then maybe the most potent source, there's breach data.
Data from hacks.
Yes, which is often described as the superpower of OSINT. It's a veritable gold mine of information, albeit illicitly obtained originally.
So not just finding if you were breached.
Right. While sites like haveibeenpinged.com are great for telling you if your email address was in a known breach, the more critical part for investigators and criminals is accessing the raw breach data itself.
What kind of data?
Data from major incidents like the Parkmobile breach or the AT&T breach. If an analyst has these databases stored locally, they can often instantly link an email address to other details like phone numbers, possibly license plate numbers, sometimes even partial or full social security numbers, passwords.
Whoa.
Yeah, that's a lot of sensitive data that, when connected, poses incredibly significant risks. Hackers can and definitely will misuse that information.
Okay, wow. That's a lot to take in about how exposed our data can actually be. But beyond the sheer techniques, you mentioned systemic challenges to data privacy in this age of OSINT.
You're right. It's not just about the how, it's also about the why it's so difficult. And this naturally leads us to ask, what exactly is publicly available information anyway?
Is there a clear definition?
That's the problem. There isn't. There's no single globally recognized legal definition for OSINT, which leads to a lot of ambiguity, a lot of gray areas.
Like what?
Well, for example, some definitions include commercially available data, data you can buy. Others strongly disagree, saying OSINT should only be truly free and public information. There's also ongoing debate on what constitutes covert versus overt collection.
How so?
For instance, believe it or not, the UK government considers merely viewing a public Facebook profile as covert surveillance, which requires official authorization.
Just looking at it.
Just looking at it, if done systematically for intelligence purposes, it highlights the differing interpretations. And generally, people often have a misguided intuition of privacy online. Defining what constitutes a reasonable expectation of privacy in the digital realm is incredibly challenging legally and ethically.
So the laws haven't kept up.
Pretty much. Existing legal frameworks like GDPR in Europe, the Data Protection Act in the UK, or IPA, they often struggle to fully encompass all OSINT activities. They weren't really designed with this scale and type of data collection in mind. This creates a significant gap, a lacuna, especially in complex situations like conflict zones.
And for individuals doing this?
Well, for non-state actors, companies, journalists, PIs, individuals, there's often a void, a doctrinal gap, because there aren't always clear legal restraints specifically on OSINT itself beyond general data protection laws. This often leads to varied ethical standards rather than unified legal ones.
And technology keeps changing too, right?
Absolutely. The technological arms race, or cat and mouse game, continues. Increasing use of encryption forces OSINT analysts to find new approaches, focusing more on metadata or different types of sources.
Like visual stuff.
Exactly. The rise of visual content, photos, videos, and sophisticated deepfakes now requires far more rigorous verification techniques. It's harder to trust what you see. And then you have the emergence of new decentralized social media platforms. These often lack consistent moderation or centralized APIs, creating both new potential data sources and new challenges for analysis.
And AI.
And absolutely, AI and machine learning are huge factors now. They're automating data collection and analysis at a scale previously unimaginable, which can significantly intensify privacy threats by making connections humans might miss.
You also mentioned digital fingerprinting being tricky.
Yes, there's the challenge of sophisticated digital fingerprinting. Ironically, some anti-fingerprinting browser extensions or techniques can sometimes make a user more unique, not less.
How does that work?
By creating detectable inconsistencies or having an unusual combination of settings, they can make your browser stand out from the crowd, making it paradoxically easier to track. It's incredibly difficult to completely hide your device signature.
So what's the takeaway there?
Well, the TLDR here, really, is that the most effective way to truly blend in online, to have a less unique fingerprint, is often through using something like the Tor browser in its standard configuration. But even that has limitations, like often requiring you to disable JavaScript, which breaks many websites.
It's constant trade-off.
It is. And all this raises that really important question. How do we effectively balance legitimate security needs or investigation needs with fundamental individual privacy rights?
Yeah.
We see this tension acutely in things like the consent paradox faced by humanitarian organizations working in dangerous conflict zones. Obtaining truly informed consent for data collection might be ethically imperative, but it's often operationally impossible or could even put people at risk.
So ethics become paramount.
Hugely. It underscores the crucial role of strong ethical guidelines and very careful consideration in all OSINT activities, whether by governments or private entities.
And it's not just about ethics in the abstract, right? There are real consequences for getting it wrong.
Oh, absolutely. Failure to comply with data protection laws like GDPR can lead to severe legal actions, really substantial fines, potentially up to 17.5 million or 4% of global turnover for companies under GDPR UK DPA.
That's huge.
It is. Plus, significant reputational damage, loss of public trust, and even the risk of having findings deemed inadmissible as evidence in court if the data wasn't obtained lawfully. The stakes are very, very high.
Okay. So given all these insights, all these techniques, challenges, what are the practical implications for you, the listener? How can you actually protect yourself and minimize your digital footprint? Now, the sources state it's nearly impossible to completely disappear online.
Yeah, that's probably true.
But you can significantly reduce your exposure and maybe regain some control, right?
Absolutely. You definitely can. The first step, maybe the most fundamental, is just to be judicious, be mindful about what you share online in the first place.
Everywhere.
Everywhere, whether it's social media, forums, comment sections, any other platform. Remember that anything you share can potentially be reshared by friends, family, even strangers, often without your explicit consent. And once it's out there, it's really, really hard to pull back. It's effectively out of your control.
And think beyond just social media posts.
Definitely. Understand that information can be gleaned not just from your obvious profiles, but also from public records, commercial databases you might be in, geospatial data like we discussed, even the deep and dark web sometimes. It's a broad landscape.
Okay, so what are some concrete, actionable steps people can take? You mentioned Morgan Stanley advises on some of these.
Yes, and these are pretty widely agreed upon best practices. First, and this might feel a bit odd, but search for yourself online.
Google yourself.
Google yourself, Bing yourself, use DuckDuckGo, use multiple search engines. It might seem a bit vain, but it's an excellent way to see what's readily, easily available about you out there. Be prepared. You might be surprised by what you find.
And if you find something bad.
If you discover sensitive information that shouldn't be public, or maybe incorrect data on one of those people search sites, contact the site administrator directly and request its removal. Sometimes they comply, sometimes they don't, but it's worth trying.
Okay, what else?
Second, set up alerts. You can use services, some free, some paid, to get notifications when your name or other key identifying information pops up online. It gives you early warning.
Good idea.
Third, use tighter privacy settings. Really dig into the settings on all your social media accounts, e-commerce sites you use, your email accounts, even your web browsers.
It takes time, though.
It does take time, but it's crucial. Understand the trade-offs. Sometimes more privacy means less convenience or functionality. And always always try to review a company's privacy policy before handing over data, even though they're dense.
What about apps?
Fourth, restrict mobile app permissions. Be really selective about granting apps access to your photos, your location, your camera, your microphone, your contacts list.
Yeah.
Ask yourself, does this weather app really need my contacts? Many apps still function perfectly well even with limited permissions. Deny by default.
Okay.
Fifth, try to limit your online accounts generally. Reduce your overall footprint by deleting or deactivating any accounts you no longer use, and be selective about opening new ones. Use guest checkout options for online shopping whenever possible to avoid creating yet another permanent profile.
Good tip.
Sixth, and this is fundamental cybersecurity hygiene, use a password manager and enable multi-factor authentication, MFA or 2FA, everywhere you can.
Non-negotiable, really.
Absolutely essential for creating unique, complex passwords for every single account, storing them securely, and adding that vital extra layer of security with MFO.
And the last one from that list.
And finally, think carefully before linking accounts together. You know, that convenience of signing into a new service using your Facebook or Google account?
Yeah, it's easy.
It's easy, but decide if that convenience is truly worth giving those big tech companies even more data about your online activities across different platforms. Often it's better to create a separate login.
Those are all excellent, really practical tips. But earlier you mentioned this idea of spoiling information. That sounded fascinating. Can you elaborate on that?
Yeah, it's an interesting strategy. Since you often can't completely avoid providing some information, maybe for a loyalty card or a basic registration, the idea of spoiling the data comes into play.
So giving fake info.
Strategically, yes. For non-critical fields, the ones that aren't essential for the service to work, you can consciously give out nonsense data. The example Michelle, one of the researchers, used was putting 123 Privacy Drive, Hollywood, California, as an address for something non-essential.
Right.
Or using a dedicated Google Voice number or a similar service for everyday registrations instead of your actual personal mobile number. It's about providing just enough data to satisfy the form, but making sure the data provided for those non-essential fields is useless for building an accurate profile of you.
Kind of like digital camouflage.
Kind of, yeah.
Yeah.
Polluting the data pool about yourself with plausible but incorrect information where it doesn't actually matter for the service you're trying to use.
And this links to teaching kids, too, you mentioned.
Absolutely. And if we connect this to the broader picture, the sources really emphasize how crucial it is to teach these principles to children early on. There was a compelling anecdote I read
Oh, yeah.
about a parent who deliberately used a fake name when ordering at a drive-thru, just as a habit. Later, their young daughter explained she used a fake name on Roblox because it works. She understood the why from seeing it modeled.
Wow, starting young.
Exactly. It really drives home the point. We need to teach them from a young age where it's appropriate to have alias accounts, maybe for gaming or forums, and when it's actually okay, even necessary, to provide alias or spoiled information. Because in today's world, there's often simply no other practical way to opt out of excessive data collection.
That's a powerful thought. Okay, so wrapping this up. What does all this mean for us, for you listening? While it definitely feels like a constant, maybe even losing battle sometimes,
It can feel that way.
understanding the landscape of OSINT and your own digital footprint is truly the crucial first step towards taking back some measure of control.
Absolutely. And this naturally leads us to ask you, the listener, how will you approach your digital interactions moving forward, knowing all this?
Yeah, what changes?
The evolution of OSINT techniques and the ways our digital footprints are created and used, it's a dynamic, ongoing process. It's not static. The more sophisticated the collection methods become, the more inventive and proactive our protection strategies really must be.
It's that cat and mouse game again.
It really is. It's a continuous cat and mouse game where your awareness and your willingness to adapt your habits are probably your strongest tools.
So maybe think about what small, actionable step you can take today, right now, to better protect your digital self. Perhaps it's finally doing that search for your own name, or maybe reviewing the permissions on your phone apps, or just thinking twice before you share that next piece of information online.
That wraps up today's discussion. Thanks for watching and tuning in. If you're curious to dive deeper into this topic, make sure to visit our website. The link is in the description below. Don't forget to subscribe and click the bell so you never miss an update. See you next time.